Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman, Chairman of the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee. The American Fire Service is rich in tradition and culture. A firefighter's life is filled with many emotional highs and lows. Stories of major fires, national disasters, medical calls, firehouse living, and family life are often verbally shared from one generation to another. Many times these stories are lost forever when a firefighter passes away. In an effort to preserve these stories, in 2019, the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee launched a new program of recording audio-video of our retirees' lives. These stories will be shared on our website, gfhbc.org. In 2020, we did not record because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please listen as these firefighters share their life experiences with all of us.
Johnny Davis, I'm 66 years old. I retired as a firefighter too with the Greensboro Fire Department. I started January the 16th, 1985. I retired in 2006 of July. I was raised in Greensboro, just a few miles out, well, in the city limits, and spent many years there. I have no members of the fire department, of my family in the fire department. I have a lot of good friends though. Before I became on the fire department, I worked at the Coca-Cola plant off Chimney Rock Road. I worked there with retired Captain Danny Lynch. He left there and went to the fire department, and a year or so later he came by out there to visit and talk to me, and I felt like that was a good opportunity for me to do, is go to the Greensboro Fire Department. The Lord blessed in that way, because a year after I left, that plant shut down. Well, back in the 80s, when the fire department would take applications, it would be as many as 1,200 to 1,500 applications put in for their jobs. They were actually hiring 45 people at the time, and there was over 1,500 applications that entered those jobs. And I was fortunate to be one of those 45. They started 30 in one class, and I was in the second class out of that bunch, and there was 15 in my class. Well, as I was growing up, I had a firefighter friend that lived across the street from my grandparents, which was next door to me, and that was W.C. Allen. Very good friend and captain. I had the privilege to work with him just before he retired. Started off at $14,000 a year was my starting salary. In my training class, there was Keith Ingold, Gary Wilson, Frank Crow, Herb Gibson, Mike Meadows, Leon Griffin, and several others that were there with me. We had 15 in our class as we started. Well, while I was in training, I had Chief Cockman, Brad Cox is my training chief. Captain Paul Brooks was the captain in training. Myself and Captain Brooks at the time, because he retired in the Marines for 10 years, what were they going to do to scare me? And in training, one time I'll never forget, as I was walking down the little hallway in the old training center, Chief Cox stopped me and said, invited me into his office and said, "Shut the door." And as I went in, and he was talking to him, and he said, "Davis, there's something different about you." He said, "I just can't quite figure it out." He said, "The rest of these guys," he said, "they're scared to death when I bark at them and holler at them." He said, "Act like don't nothing bother you." I said, "Chief, you got to remember one thing." And he said, "What's that?" I said, "I'm a former Marine. I'm not afraid of anything." As beginning my career as a firefighter, I always felt it was a privilege to be able to serve my community. I always wanted to help people and be there for them in the time of need. I always counted it an honor to be able to serve in my area. I've been serving as the Firefighter Club chaplain for a couple of years now. It's an honor to be able to help these guys, to pray for them, be with them. We've had several firefighters in the past year to pass away. So it's been an honor to be able to help these families and be a blessing to them, to try to be an encouragement to them. We try to keep up with who's sick, who's in the hospital, keep people updated about what's going on in their lives and how they're doing. I also served as chaplain for the fire department the last 9 years that I served as an active firefighter, and had many opportunities to share the gospel with firefighters. It was an honor to, but nothing to be brag about, but I had opportunities to preach several retired firefighters' funerals and some family members of retired firefighters. In December this past year, we had a retired firefighter that was in the hospital. He had a light stroke, and had the privilege to go by and talk with him and share the gospel with him, and he accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior that day. And that's truly a blessing, and it's been a difference in his life that he shared with his family and with multiple friends on Facebook and by texting them, and he's just so grateful. My first station was at Station 11 on South Am Eugene Street, and back when it was in the old station, I was on Engine 11. My first captain was Roy Mark. The driver on that company was Bobby Taylor, and the other firefighter on the back of the truck was Brooks Langley. Also there was, back then the day, was Truck 1. Captain Cliff Oakley was the captain, Phil May was the driver, and that's when the squad was there, and that was Chuck Martis, Don Hayes, and Garen Foy was there. My first captain was very, very helpful in my growing as a firefighter. He was very encouraging. He helped me to learn a routine as far as working the pump on the pump panel. Very encouraging to help me to become a better firefighter. Well, the one that sticks on me the most is the Rev, because I am a preacher. My nickname is the Rev, put on me many years ago because I am a preacher. My family was very supportive of me as a firefighter from the very start, as a recruit. They also were very supporting of me all the years that I served there as a firefighter. They stood behind me, they encouraged me, not because of anything I'd done, but they were proud that their husband and daddy was a firefighter. Then I've just always counted it a blessing to have a family that stood behind me and helped me. That made it much easier for me to be able to do my job. I guess one of the biggest pranks that I've seen done was one time at Station 14. I was working on another shift, and I was working with Johnny Cole and Jimmy Gwynn. And there was a little bit of discussion. The captain was off that day, who was going to sleep over in the captain's room. So Jimmy Gwynn went over there and took his stuff over there, and he was driving that day. Johnny Cole was the original driver, so Johnny thought he was going to sleep in the captain's room, but Jimmy went over there and he slipped in and locked the doors, wouldn't let Johnny in. So Johnny would come over there in the bedroom and took Jimmy's TV and wrapped the cable all the way around the Cablevision cable around the TV and everything. And Jimmy come in, seen that. And so in a few minutes in the locker room, I heard all kind of beating and banging going on. And Johnny Cole had about 3 lockers of uniforms in there. So when I went in through the locker room, looked like a hurricane had blown through. There was uniforms of Johnny Cole's all over the locker room, all over the bathroom, in the shower with water running on them. One of probably the best pranks I've seen done. Another one that comes to mind was years ago at Station 12. David Morgan was a rookie, and he was there, and he kept messing with Raymond Holloman. Every day he would mess with Raymond Holloman, every day. So David left one day, and he had his uniform with his badges and name tags and all on it. When he left, so Raymond went in there and got it, folded it up, put it in a pan with ice, and I put it in a pan, put it in the freezer and froze it. So David comes in the next day to work, and he said, I can't find my shirts. Anybody seen my duty shirts? I don't know where it's at. And everybody kind of grinned. I said, if you look in the freezer, you might find it. He said, in the freezer? What do you mean by that? I said, just look in the freezer. So he goes, looks in the freezer, and there lays his uniform, his duty shirt, in a pan of water, froze solid ice, and he was just amazed. He said, I never thought this would have happened to me. That's what happens when you mess with the older guys. As far as the union goes, I was never a part of it. Back when I was on, the union wasn't that strong like it is today. There was just only a handful of people in it. When I came on the fire department and went out on the line, I was very fortunate. I had some good guys that cooked, that were good cooks, and taught me how to cook. We eat together. Not did we just eat together at the fire station, but we eat together at other times. We helped each other. We worked together. Somebody was moving or something, everybody would join in, help them move. If somebody had a project at the home they needed help with, the guys would pull together and help each other. Probably the last 12 years that I was on the fire department, I was the cook on my shift. I had some specialties. Guys always liked the pork ribs that I cooked on the grill, barbecued ribs. I was fried chicken pretty good. About anything, I could cook about anything. Because I had some, like I said, as I came on as a rookie, I had some good cooks to teach me, take time to teach me. I never forget George Trogdon made homemade biscuits one day at the station. I asked him, I said, will you teach me how to make homemade biscuits? He said, yeah, I'll teach you. He said, well, I'm not going to show you but one time. So he showed me that one day, and so we come in the next day. He said, well, do you remember what I taught you last day? And I said, well, I thought for a second, what are you talking about, George? He said, how to make biscuits. I said, yeah, I remember. So I made biscuits that day, and I've been making them ever since. Homemade biscuits at the firehouse was always called cat heads because guys always like that. As my first captain, Roy Mark, said, a man don't eat one of anything. Well, when I came on, we all slept in the same one big room. It was a bed, dresser, bed, dresser, bed, dresser. I think there was a little bit more camaraderie then. Now everybody's kind of got their own little cubicles. Everybody kind of stays to themselves. They got little TVs there. Of course, everybody has their cell phones, so they got their own mini computer at their hand. There's not as much fellowship going along amongst stations today as there used to be back in the 80s and 90s and even 2000. Usually around the firehouse table was a lot of conversation going on, stories and things that happened. Always somebody had something funny to say or do. There used to be an old tradition at the firehouse that if somebody spilled a drink, everybody spilled a drink. And literally they would turn their drinks over. I'll never forget, there was a lady that would come by once a year trying to sell you some kind of insurance. And we was at Station 11 one day, and she came in. We was really a little bit perturbed that she was there because she done come 2 times on our shift before. But so sure enough, we was all sitting around the table. We all had a glass of tea. Sure enough, one guy knocks his tea over. Everybody just takes her tea and dumps it out on top of the table. She says, I think I'm done here, and she left, never come back. As being a retired firefighter today, there's a lot of, the young department is very young today. So unless you know somebody that's working there, you're going to be kind of in a new world because you're going in, you're meeting people that you've not met before. But it is most of them are very gracious to talk to you and let you share stories with them about things that happened in your career, how that things have improved, how things have changed so much over the years. And I'm very thankful that the young firefighters do receive retirees with a welcome hand. First call I went on was on a wreck on Business Highway 40. There was a car that had hit a tree, had a little small engine fire. That was the first fire that I rode as a rookie. As far as calls that were probably more disturbing than others, I hadn't been on the line but about 6 months. Matter of fact, it was January the 1st of 1986. Down on the highway there was a wreck. A tractor and trailer was coming, going west on 40 and crossed the media. A tie rod end broke on it, crossed the media and hit a Jeep that had 3 cousins in it. They were in the Jeep just literally got up underneath the tractor and trailer and just rolled it up, balled it up that it was to the size of an oven. There was literally hardly no body parts. It was so cold that day that we had to look in the dirt and see steam coming up to find parts of the body. Probably one of the worst accidents I went on. Seeing calls like that makes you appreciate life. It makes you appreciate that the Lord protects you and how He guides you, and sometimes to be going on calls that are bad, but yet you can be a help to other family members that are there to try to help them deal and cope with what's going on. The value of running medical calls nowadays is people get a lot more help a whole lot quicker. Most response times are anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes in the city of Greensboro with a fire truck. And so that just speeds things up, and people are able to get help much quicker versus when I first came on. It was always the squads that rode, and there was only 3 squads for the whole city of Greensboro. So they had a lot of territory to cover, and it took them sometimes longer than that to get to somebody to help. Some of the biggest calls I was on was down there off a lumber yard down there. I was on 2 different big fires down there. I was in training when the Davie Street fire happened. Matter of fact, I was working at the hospital that night for my EMT training to receive my EMT certificate. I did go ride down there after I got off that night at the hospital at 11 o'clock, and they were still battling the fire. I just stayed back because I was a recruit, still in training. I just stayed out of the way. 9/11 was very disturbing. I can remember the day that it happened, where I was at, what I was doing. I can remember as I was working with Vance Rail, we were mowing some yards, and we had one guy that was mowing for us. We got there at his house and started to unload lawnmowers. He comes to the door, started hollering for us, and at first didn't know what was going on because we hadn't heard anything. And he's hollering, motion for us to come in the house. He said, "Y'all got to see this. This is history." And we still didn't know what was going on. And he said, "You've got to come in and see this. The Twin Towers have been hit by planes." And so we went in and seen what had happened. And later that day, we went by Station 9 on Friendly Avenue and just went in to get a drink and a pack of crackers. And they was on TV and showing the buildings, how they collapsed, and all the firefighters that were there, and all the dust and everything, the chaos that was going on. I can only imagine what was going through those firefighters' minds as they were working diligently to try to save their brothers in the fire service. How they was trying to be a help to the people that were injured, and how to try to protect the ones that were outside the building to get them away from everything. It was devastating to think that something like that could happen in our country. And them losing into 9/11, losing 343 firefighters, that would be over half of what we have in the Greensboro Fire Department today. It'd be very devastating. I can remember one firefighter that died in a training exercise, and that was Captain Jackie Beard. And I was during that time, I was the chaplain, and they called me, and I went to the hospital there and had to tell his wife that what had happened. And probably one of the saddest times for me as a chaplain to have to tell his wife what had happened. And never forget that year also at the Medal and Awards banquet, we always read the names of who had passed away that year in the line of duty. And just so happened that year I had on a fire department dress uniform, Class A uniform, and my jacket, the name in it was Jackie Beard. I had several mentors as I came on the fire department, and that really helped me and taught me the strategy of fighting fire, things how to do and what not to do and all. One of them was Captain Phil May. We worked together from day one as I went on the line. He was a driver. The first 2 weeks I was on the line there on Truck 1 as a recruit right out of training. The first day I was there, I was riding shotgun on Truck 1. I knew nothing about that side of town at Station 11. I knew where South Am Eugene Street was at. I knew where Florida Street was at, and that was it. And as a rookie, every day you went to the grocery store. So they would always send me to the grocery store with a radio. And I think about the NASCAR commercials where they had two guys going through the grocery store with the buggies flying. That's the way I was, because I was always scared I'd get called on a call, and I didn't know where I was going. So Phil was telling us, have Truck 1 go to F3, and I'll tell you which side of the road I'm going to pick you up on. And so we became very good friends over the years, still very good friends through this day. Beginning my career as a firefighter, my life changed a whole lot. I had spent, as I mentioned earlier, 10 years in the Marine Reserves. I became disciplined during that time. And being a firefighter, being a disciplined firefighter was something that I was very proud to be as a firefighter and be part of the Greensboro Fire Department. I can remember when I came through training, everything was always proposed by what the Phoenix Fire Department done. Now the Phoenix Fire Department proposes what the Greensboro Fire Department does. Greensboro Fire Department was one of the first in the country to be a Class 1 ISO fire department related and accredited fire. Probably one of the greatest things that happened to me and the proudest moment I have was when I became the chaplain for the Greensboro Fire Department. I had such a burden for firefighters. Unusual thing that happened that day is I talked to Chief Shoemate. He lived close to Station 9. I asked him would he stop by that afternoon, and I said, I want to talk to you about something. So he stopped by, and I followed him out to the car. Everybody got through talking. I said, Chief, I said, I got something to ask you. I said, at the time the department didn't have a chaplain. I said, I'd like to become the chaplain for the fire department. He kind of laughed. I said, what's so funny about that? He said, we were just talking about this 2 days ago in the office, that we was going to put out a thing, seeing if anybody would be interested in becoming a chaplain. He said, just send me an email. I said, it'll be on your computer before you get home this afternoon. Dealing with deaths on the fire department is different than dealing with deaths just normally. Because a lot of times you're directly involved in trying to rescue that person, to save that person, to be able to get to them. And dealing with that is, my way is through God. God has helped me and given me strength and gives me a passion for people. I never forget the fire down on Spring Garden Street there where the 3 young people died a little over 20 years ago now. I was the chaplain then, and I helped deal with those families that came in. Chief Douglas and Chief Brown called me, and I went down and met with the families, tried to be an encouragement to them, tried to keep them distracted from the fire scene, just prayed with them, and I knew that it was not going to be good, but I knew God would give them peace if we just asked them to. In 1988 or 89, I went to Station 17 there on Lake Brant Road. I think it's Station 41 now. I worked, it was when they first put females at that station. It was a new station. I worked with Anita Strong. It was me, Anita Strong, Sonny Mitchell, and Tommy McNeil was my captain. There was also firefighter Kathy Smith there and firefighter Mitzi Rice at the station, all 3 on different shifts. That was the first opportunity that I had to work with female firefighters at the station. Now, Captain Kay Pierman was the FEO at Station 8, and I worked with her some because Station 11 and Station 8 wrote a lot of calls together. So I had good experiences with working with the females. I had no problem. They'd done their job. We got along good. So everything went well. In my career, probably if I had anything to do different, I tried to apply myself every day. I tried to learn more every day, try to be the best firefighter I could. I tried to spend time with the rookies that I had come into the stations to work with them. And maybe something that I would have maybe done different a little bit. Maybe I would have tried to just been a better firefighter than I was. I see in the changes in the fire department since I came on, there's more education out there and available as far as schooling and training. Probably the biggest thing that I've seen in difference today versus back in the day when I first came on is there's a lot of firefighters don't stay for a career. They stay for a short time, anywhere from a year to 5 years, and they're gone. When I came on, man, it was a career. You were there to stay. And I think that's probably one of the biggest changes I've seen. Even before I left the fire department, the roles as firefighters became more challenging, more difficult, but there was a lot of things, special groups. They had the collapse team, the high-rise team, just so many different specialties that they had, and some of the stations were very heavily burdened with a lot of the same men doing the same things, like Swift Water Rescue. Station 5 has always been very heavily burdened with a lot of these things, and now a lot of them spread out. Then now the Greensboro Fire Department has 2 stations that are hazmat stations, or there used to be just 1. Well, I guess the one man that has stood out with me more so than any other as firefighter, there's a couple of them really. Captain Allen Knowing him, the biggest part of my life. I grew up with his daughters, and he was one of the ones that in the neighborhood, if somebody needs some help, he was always there to help you. Then another one was Captain Phil May. We worked together at the fire station. We worked together on our days off. We hunted together. We fished together. Most of the time I seen him more than I did my family because they were at school during the day, and the only time I seen them was in the evenings, the time they get home from school, and we eat supper together and they'd go to bed. But Captain May and myself were together a whole lot. Oh my. As far as the fire department, I'd like to be remembered as a firefighter, but most of all, I'd like to be remembered as a Christian man that loved God and wanted to share the gospel with others and be there for them and encourage them and be praying for them. I would like for my family to remember me that I was a dedicated husband, a dedicated dad. I love my kids. I love my grandkids. I'm just proud to have a good family. I've had, over the years, I've had a lot of hobbies. I used to love to play softball. I started playing sports when I was 8 years old, and I played up until softball until I was 58 years old. So I had a pretty good run at playing sports. I also enjoyed playing golf and fishing, hunting. But nowadays, my biggest hobby is as a preacher and reading his word and studying it. As of September 8th of 2023, I was voted in as pastor at Lighthouse Baptist Church in Pleasant Garden, North Carolina. What an honor it is for me and my wife to serve them people there at that church. Looking forward to what God's going to do there in that ministry. I've had opportunities to go and talk with the rookies or recruits there on their first days. I'd go in and try to encourage them to pay attention, take good notes, apply it to what they're taught, apply it to their life, to their studies. If they tell them, hey, you might want to remember this, or you might see it again, highlight that on your paperwork, because most likely that's what you're going to see on your test. And over the years, as I was the chaplain for the fire department, I always went in and on the first day as a recruit class and would have prayer with these men, these recruits. And the Lord always helped. I guess if I wanted to say something to leave behind in a legacy of the Greensboro Fire Department for me, is I'd like to thank each and every one that I had a privilege to work with. It was an honor to serve with you. Chief Cockman, you were one of my battalion chiefs. I enjoyed working with you. You always treated me fairly. Everybody I worked with, I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I had a good career. My career was cut short because I had some injuries. So I was there 21 and a half years. But very much enjoyed my career. There's one thing that I would like to share. When I was chaplain on fire department, before this, I was at Station 14 on South M Eugene Street, and we was on a fire. And on this fire right here, this is the backside of the building and the house that we were in. And I was inside this house, and Captain Gary Falk was on engine 1, I was on engine 14. He ended up going inside with me on this fire. And it was so hot and so intense with smoke and everything that I was laying on the floor and could not see my hand before my face. And as we got into our so deep, the hose got kinked up outside. I had enough hose to be able to go all the way through the house, laid outside, but it got kinked up. We got to a brick wall there, and just on the other side of this brick wall was where all that fire was at. We got stopped there, and Captain Falk kept telling us we needed more hose. We need more hose on the radio, and nobody ever got it freed up before we could go through. But that was God's hand of protection. If we had got past there, we would have been seriously injured. This was before the Nomex hoods and all. I got 2nd and 3rd degrees burns on both sides of my face. But I had an opportunity to back out of that fire. I share in my preaching and my beliefs in the gospel that I had a privilege to be able to back out of that fire, had an opportunity to back out of that fire and not get burned. And I use that in my preaching I had an opportunity to back out. But as a person, if they're not saved and they die and go to hell, they don't have an opportunity to back out. It's a life for eternity they'll spend there in hell. And also, I had a privilege to go to a youth camp years ago, and I was asked to come and at where my church was. The youth were there at camp, and I was called and asked to come on a Tuesday night and do the chapel time. And the man there at the camp said, "Tell Johnny to come and bring his fire department stuff." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this fire department stuff. What am I going to do with this?" And so I asked the captains, I was at the station, I asked the captains, so can I use the office for a little while? And so they give me the privilege to be able to go up and have their space for a little bit. And I got up and started praying. I said, "Lord, what would you have me to do? What can I do with this fire department stuff?" And first thing that popped in my mind, the Lord gave me, was when, as a firefighter, we were trained to teach others that if your clothes catch on fire, you're supposed to stop, drop, and pray. Stop, drop, and roll. And so the Lord told me, well, if you get in trouble with Him, you're supposed to stop, drop, and pray. So I said, "Okay, Lord, that's good." So He started giving me other little things. And so I asked the Lord, what would you have me to do as far as with my turnout gear? And so I kept praying. So the Lord brought some verses to my mind out of Ephesians chapter 6 about putting hold of the whole armor of God. And a little bit out of order and all, but in things that we use as far as related to what the Scripture says, it talked about putting on the breastplate of righteousness. And I illustrated that by putting on my turnout gear. It talked about girding your loins up. I used that by putting on my bunker pants. Talked about having your feet shod. And I used that, I told about how my boots protected my feet. And then I had my helmet on. That was my helmet of salvation. And the Lord blessed that ministry. Over 20-some years, I've had opportunity to share with hundreds of young people the gospel through fire department equipment. I have quite a bit of equipment that I've accumulated over the years. And literally, I've been to South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, all over North Carolina to present this gospel. I even had to go buy a van. At one time, I had so much equipment that I was carrying. I had to purchase a new van to be able to get it to the churches and to the youth rallies. I've done vacation Bible schools. The Lord's always blessed that ministry. It was all Him that done this. But always, whenever I used Ephesians 6 and putting on the whole armor of God, even in churches that I didn't even know how I got there, didn't know that anybody at that church, the Lord always blessed that ministry and saved young people and saved adults. It's always been a blessing to be able to do that. I guess most of all, for my family, remember me is Johnny Davis, has remembered me as a Christian dad, Christian husband, and a Christian firefighter, to want to help and encourage people.
In closing, the Greensboro Firefighters History Book Committee hopes you have gained a greater insight into the dangers, the challenges, and emotional events that have influenced and shaped the American firefighter.